You to imagine waking up on a Saturday morning. You have this massive, just head-splitting hangover.
Oh, the absolute worst kind of morning.
Right. And you have a complete, total blackout of the night before. Like you have absolutely no idea how you even got back to your apartment.
Just completely missing time.
Exactly. But floating in that mental haze is this lingering, really visceral memory of a nightmare. And in the dream, a pair of hands is violently strangling someone.
That is terrifying.
It gets worse. You're lying there, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together those missing hours, and then your buddy just barges through your front door.
As they do.
Right. He starts making coffee, talking a mile a minute, and he just casually mentions that a local serial killer, a killer whose signature is strangling his victims well, he struck again last night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in that moment, surrounded by the physical evidence of your own lost time, you look down at your hands. You start to wonder, am I the killer?
I mean, it's the ultimate terrifying scenario, right? But I think what makes it truly chilling isn't even the presence of a killer in the city.
It's the self-doubt.
Exactly. It's the realization that your own mind is, like, entirely willing to turn against you. It'll just weaponize those blank spaces in your memory to build a case for your own guilt.
And that psychological freefall is exactly our focus for today's deep dive. We're looking into an Egyptian colloquial short story. It's titled Wash Adami, which roughly translates to human monster.
Written by Bahaa Awaad.
Right, Bahaa Awaad. And our mission today is to explore how, profound isolation, the ghost of past heartbreak, and just a single offhand insult can completely unravel a person's sanity.
Because this story is just such a fascinating case study in how we misinterpret our own internal emotional alarms.
Yeah, how our minds kind of mistranslate things. While you, the listener, probably haven't ever suspected yourself of being a literal serial killer.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But I think you'll absolutely relate to how, like, a harsh comment from a coworker can just live rent-free in your head and make you question your entire character.
Oh, totally. We've all been there. You experience a physiological signal, a racing heart, insomnia, maybe a sense of detachment, and instead of recognizing it for what it actually is, you twist it.
You twist it into evidence that you're the villain.
Exactly. So today we're going to look at the mechanics of how a person can literally talk themselves into believing they are a monster.
So to really understand how this protagonist ends up interrogating his own sanity on a Saturday morning, we kind of have to look at the armor he wears during the week.
His whole professional persona.
Right. So he's an immigrant living in Germany. He works in this very bureaucratic administrative role. And his entire identity at work is built around being just a rigid stickler for the rules.
Like zero flexibility.
None. He's the guy who applies regulations exactly as they are written down to the letter.
Which, is a really classic trauma response for someone who feels profoundly displaced.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, as an immigrant, he already feels like an outsider, right? He feels that label of foreigner just sort of staring back at him from every single face.
So he uses the rule book to hide.
Exactly. When you feel that vulnerable, bureaucracy becomes a really convenient shield. If you follow the rules perfectly, you basically can't be criticized.
Because you can just say, hey, I'm just following protocol.
Right. You can't be singled out or, othered for making a subjective mistake. So his strictness isn't about being malicious at all. It's a survival mechanism so he doesn't get seen.
But that armor only works until it doesn't. And that happens when he gets this welfare application from an immigrant family from Hungary.
Which is where everything starts to go wrong.
Yeah, because the application falls into this sort of regulatory gray area. His female colleague, who actually oversaw the family's case, she strongly recommends approving it.
But he won't do it.
Nope. He finds this tiny, technical, bureaucratic reason to deny it. He brings the stamp down and rejects the application.
And that just creates a massive rupture in his workplace, because before this moment, he and this female colleague had a really pleasant, almost warm relationship.
Right, they'd exchange morning smiles. He respected her work.
Exactly. So when he suddenly digs his heels in and denies this vulnerable family, she doesn't just see it as like a professional disagreement. She takes it as a profound character flaw.
And the confrontation escalates. And this is where she drops the line that completely alters his trajectory. She looks him dead in the eye.
This part is so intense.
It really is. She lets this uncomfortable silence hang in the air, and she says with this absolute chilling calm, You cannot be human. You are a human monster.
And the delivery is really what makes it so devastating. She doesn't like shout it in a fit of rage.
Right. If she was yelling, you could just be like, oh, she's having a temper tantrum.
Exactly, but she delivers it like she's stating a fundamental law of physics, like it's just a fact. You are a human monster.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a second.
Mm.
Because getting a harsh critique at work is something we all deal with. It's like getting a bad performance review.
Sure.
Usually we pretend it doesn't bother us, we vent to a friend, call the coworker a jerk, and we move on. But this specific phrase, human monster, it acts like a splinter in his mind.
It infects everything.
Why does it burrow so deeply into his psyche instead of just, making him mad?
Because the insult doesn't introduce a new idea. It actually names a fear he already harbors about himself.
Oh, wow. So he already thinks he's a monster.
Well, he spent years building this protective shell, right? Operating like a machine just to survive in a foreign country, he feels completely disconnected from everyone around him.
So when she calls him a monster, it resonates with that internal void he's been trying so hard to ignore.
Yes. She is essentially validating his darkest suspicion about herself that he is completely hollow inside.
Which brings us to the hangover. It's Saturday morning, his head is just pounding, the monster comment is echoing in his brain, and his Romanian friend, Michael, bursts into the apartment.
And Michael is just such a brilliant narrative foil here.
He really is. He comes in, speaking this loud, chaotic mix of German and English. He takes one look at our hungover protagonist lying in bed and immediately calls him a straw rooster.
A straw rooster. It's such a specific phrase.
I actually had to look that one up.
Yeah, it's a Romanian idiom. Michael explains that a straw rooster is someone who sleeps until noon and just fails to do their life's duty of waking the farm.
Right, because they don't fulfill their natural purpose. They are just a fake, empty vessel made of straw.
And on any other day, that's probably just a funny throwaway insult between two buddies.
But today is not any other day.
No. For a guy who was just clinically diagnosed as a human monster by a colleague he respects, being called a fake, empty vessel made of straw is absolutely devastating.
It just compounds that feeling that everyone around him can see this massive void inside him.
And this internal sense of emptiness is about to collide violently with the external world. Because this is the exact moment he realizes he has a complete blackout of the night before.
And his brain just abhors that vacuum of memory.
It does, so it immediately starts trying to fill the blank space with the nightmare he just woke up from. That visceral, physical feeling of a hand squeezing a neck.
It's wild. He essentially becomes his own prosecuting attorney. He starts compiling this terrifying case against himself.
Putting all these impossible dots together.
Right, like, okay, the local serial killer always strikes on Saturday nights. The protagonist has complete alcohol-induced blackouts on those exact same nights.
The killer strangles his victims.
And the protagonist is having intense, recurring nightmares about strangling hands.
I mean, it is the ultimate manifestation of confirmation bias. The human brain is basically a pattern recognition machine.
So it's just trying to make sense of the nonsense.
Exactly. When you feel a profound, unexplainable sense of guilt and numbness, your brain will actively search your environment for something to justify those feelings.
So he's taking all this circumstantial evidence and using it to build a narrative that explains his own emptiness.
Right.
What I found so striking during this part was how he compares himself to his friend Michael. Because Michael is sitting there endlessly chattering about these lottery apps.
He's obsessed.
He is. He's passionately recounting this story about a guy in Hanover who won €1 million on a Wednesday and then won $8 million the next week, or someone else winning 6,000.
He's just calculating odds, treating this completely random luck like it's a profound science.
And the irony here is just incredible. The protagonist looks at Michael, and he's not annoyed by him. He actually envies him.
Deep, profound envy.
Like, isn't it wild that he would rather have a mundane gambling habit than deal with his own mind? How empty do you have to be to envy someone else's delusion?
I think it really highlights this crucial psychological mechanism.
Yep.
He's experiencing something akin to, like, an autoimmune response, but for his psyche.
An autoimmune response.
Yeah. His brain detects this massive, unexplained emotional numbness. It registers that apathy as a foreign threat, something unnatural.
So it starts attacking itself.
Exactly. The psyche starts attacking his own character to try and make sense of the void. He literally wonders if his apathy is the trademark of a psychopath.
Because he watches the news, sees disasters and explosions, and he feels a strange joy or at least relief.
Right, he realizes he lacks normal human empathy in those moments.
So he's trying to rationalize his emotional void by diagnosing himself as a literal monster, which I guess is actually a comfort mechanism.
In a really twisted way, yes. Because a serial killer, even a monstrous one, has a motive, they have a drive, they have an identity.
Whereas a lonely guy with a hangover who feels nothing just has an empty void.
Exactly. By convincing himself he might be the killer, he is giving his apathy a tangible, solvable shape.
That is incredibly dark, but it makes perfect sense. The brain would rather be a monster than be nothing at all.
But we have to remember, this apathy isn't a permanent personality trait, it's a symptom.
And the root cause of that symptom surfaces the very next weekend, because he tries to actually change his behavior.
Right. Terrified by this circumstantial case he's built against himself, he makes a hard rule for the following weekend. No alcohol. No going out.
He just locks himself in.
He confines himself to his apartment to ensure he cannot possibly black out and hurt anyone.
But the sobriety brings silence. And that silence strips away the distraction of the hangover and the paranoia. It leaves him face to face with the actual reason he feels so dead inside.
Which has absolutely nothing to do with being a psychopath.
No, it's all tied to a failed love story from way before he ever moved to Germany.
And this backstory reveals that his actions in the past are the exact opposite of monstrous. He was deeply, profoundly in love with a woman, but she ultimately left him for another man.
Right, and when that other man abandons her, she tries to come back to the protagonist.
Which is usually the part in a story where the guy gets his revenge.
Yeah, I assumed he would turn her away out of spite, and that's what fuels this whole monster narrative he has about himself.
But it's actually the exact opposite. That's what makes his current state so tragic. When she comes back to him, broken, he refuses her. But not to punish her.
Why then?
He realizes that if she stays with him in her moment of crisis, it will be out of a sense of moral obligation and guilt. It won't be true love.
Oh, man.
He genuinely wants her to be happy, and he knows her true happiness isn't with him, so he just lets her go. He sacrifices his own heart to protect her future.
Wow. So he basically absorbed all of that pain so she wouldn't have to carry it.
Exactly.
And while he's sitting in his apartment, sober and totally alone, he remembers this quote from the Persian poet Omar Khayyam. He says, "I will enter the dirt with your love, and will not exit it except with you."
That single line explains his entire emotional state right there. I will enter the dirt with your love. He literally buried his own capacity to feel.
He chose a kind of emotional death so she could live fully.
Yes. His profound apathy isn't the trademark of a serial killer. It's thick, heavy scar tissue from loving someone too deeply and losing them.
But the tragedy is that his mind just won't let him see his own humanity. He's so convinced of his own corruption that the universe seemingly provides him with one final, just undeniable piece of evidence.
Sunday morning arrives.
Yep. Sunday morning, Michael visits again, and he brings the morning news. The serial killer struck again last night, and this time the victim was a weak, young boy under 20.
And the protagonist just immediately spirals. He knows he stayed home, right? He made that rule. But his brain starts playing tricks on him.
Like, did I fall asleep? Did I somehow slip out of the apartment? Am I capable of things I don't even remember?
And then Michael, who is completely oblivious to his friend's internal panic, delivers the final blow.
Yeah, he laughs and mentions that the female colleague from work, the one who called him a human monster in the first place, has this running joke theory around the office.
She's telling people that he is the serial killer.
It is the ultimate psychological trap. The very person who planted the word monster in his head is now explicitly naming him as the murderer.
Validating all of his terrifying late-night theories.
It's like psychological hypochondria. You have a cough, you consult WebMD, and you convince yourself you have a rare terminal disease.
Your brain takes completely benign symptoms and just maps them onto the worst possible outcome.
Except here, his symptom is a broken heart, and his self-diagnosis is serial murder.
Right. And because he is, at his core, a deeply moral person, remember, this is the same guy who sacrificed his own happiness for the woman he loved. He decides he just cannot risk it.
Even if there's only a 1% chance.
Exactly. A 1% chance that his blackouts are masking a murderous alter ego is a risk he refuses to inflict on society.
Which leads to a genuinely jaw-dropping moment. He doesn't pack a bag, he doesn't flee the country or go on the run.
He walks straight into the local police station.
He sits down across from a senior officer, and he offers up his own freedom. He spills everything, the blackouts, the erratic drinking, the recurring nightmares of strangling hands, and his coworker's joke theory.
He just offers his DNA right there on the spot. He is fully prepared to be locked in a cage for the rest of his life.
Can you imagine the tension in that interrogation room? He's bracing for the handcuffs. He's just waiting for the officer to tackle him.
But the senior officer does something entirely disarming.
Right. He looks at this terrified, trembling man, and he just smiles. The story describes it as this gentle smile, like he's looking at a naive child.
Because the officer has the missing piece of the puzzle, he calmly informs him that his DNA is not needed. The real serial killer, a guy in his 20s with psychiatric issues, was already caught the night before.
They got him via a perfect DNA match. The terror holding the city hostage is over.
The sheer physical weight that must have dropped from the protagonist's shoulders in that moment, I mean, it's unimaginable.
But the police officer isn't finished. He listened to this sprawling, frantic confession, and he offers this brilliant, unexpected diagnosis.
He tells the protagonist, "You aren't a serial killer, sir. You are suffering from the symptoms of falling in love."
I was absolutely floored by this twist. I mean, the officer breaks down all the quote-unquote evidence, the insomnia, the erratic drinking, colleagues noticing he's constantly distracted,
A racing heart, sweating.
committing incredibly foolish acts like walking into a police station to falsely confess to murder based on a coworker's joke.
Right. The officer tells him these are not the signs of a murderer. They are the symptoms of the serial killer called love. He's terrified of his own awakening passions.
I just love this so much because it shows how we so often misread our own internal symptoms. A racing heart and an insomnia can mean terror, but it can also mean passion.
Exactly. The officer is expertly describing a phenomenon known in psychology as the misattribution of arousal.
Misattribution of arousal, how does that work?
Well, our autonomic nervous system reacts to high-stress situations by flooding the body with adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your palms sweat, you can't sleep. But here's the catch.
The body doesn't know the difference.
Right. The physical symptoms of profound dread are identical to the physical symptoms of intense romantic excitement. It is up to the brain to look at the environment and apply a label to those sensations.
And because his brain was so heavily conditioned by his past trauma, because he'd spent years assuming he was a hollow, empty vessel when his body finally started feeling the chaotic spark of a new connection, his brain mislabeled it.
It assumed the racing heart must be evidence of a dark, violent impulse.
Instead of just the terrifying vulnerability of caring about someone again.
He had buried his heart in the dirt, like the quote said. So when it finally started beating again, it felt like a monster waking up.
Wow.
And the officer provides one final, crucial piece of perspective. He points out that the female colleague's joke about him being the killer isn't a sign of fear.
Right, if she was actually terrified, she wouldn't be joking about it at the water cooler.
Exactly. It's a sign of fixation. If she is making up stories about him outside of work, it means he is occupying space in her mind. She isn't terrified of him. She is actively thinking about him.
And as the protagonist stands up to leave, just entirely stunned by this, the officer offers a parting thought that fundamentally rewrites the man's reality. He looks at him and says, "You are a good man."
Think about the power of that statement. That simple sentence acts as an antidote to the poison injected by his colleague's initial insult.
It totally overwrites it.
It peels the sticky note that said human monster right off his forehead. It required an external authority figure to look at all his messy internal evidence and officially rule, you are not evil, you are just a deeply wounded human.
And once that delusion is shattered, the energy he was using to prosecute and isolate himself suddenly has to go somewhere. The narrative pivots beautifully to Monday morning.
The weekend from hell is finally over.
It is. He walks back into that bureaucratic office where this entire nightmare started. But he doesn't put the armor back on.
No, he walks straight up to the female colleague's desk.
He tells her he spoke to their manager and officially approved the Hungarian family's welfare application.
He actively dismantles the rigid wall he had built between himself and the world.
He lets the shield drop. And in that moment of vulnerability, he takes a massive leap. He invites her to lunch at a Chinese restaurant downtown to, quote-unquote, discuss the family's case.
And her response is just perfect. She smiles at him and she simply says, why not?
Why not? It's the sound of a door unlocking. The vast, dark emptiness that haunted him, that he tried to fill with self-hatred, is finally swallowed up by the resurrection of this old, dormant feeling of connection.
He wasn't a monster. He was just a human who had forgotten how to feel. And the story leaves us with this profound realization that healing rarely feels peaceful at first.
Right. The return of emotion to a numb heart isn't a gentle sunrise. It's a disorienting waking up.
When we've spent years protecting ourselves from pain, the sudden return of feeling can easily be misdiagnosed as a psychological breakdown.
It is a phenomenal reminder of how viciously we can prosecute ourselves when we don't understand our own pain. So before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with something to mull over.
A final thought.
Yeah. Think about the last time you felt a deep, unexplainable anxiety or a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread about your life. You felt those tight, strangling hands around your own neck, convinced that you were failing or that something was fundamentally broken inside of you.
We've all had those moments.
What if that feeling wasn't a warning that something is terribly wrong with you? What if that panic was just your mind's messy, chaotic, terrifying way of telling you that you are finally, at long last, ready to care about something or someone again?
That is a really powerful reframe for anyone who feels like they're fighting their own mind.
Keep that in mind next time you find yourself standing trial in your own head. Until next time.